So it's the big election in America between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. While there is so much interest in India and around the world as to who will become the next president of the United States, it ultimately boils down to a bunch of swing states, some important communities, whether they show up at the vote or not. We'll also talk about the Indian American community, whether they are overwhelmingly Democrat or they split. Let's try and find a little bit more about this U.S. election, which is being closely watched, with Dhruv Jaishankar, Executive Director with ORF America. Thank you very much, Dhruv, for speaking with us. So, big picture, I mean, we're a day away from Election Day. Just how big is this election? What are the stakes?
It's a big election. It feels like every 4 years there's a big election in the U.S. It's a very divided polity. Roughly 45% of Americans vote Republican, 45% vote Democrat. And really it's only about 5 to 10% whose opinion has to be swayed each election. And the divides are quite deep across age lines, gender lines, cultural lines, rural, urban. I think there's a big divide there. So I think this is playing out again, as it is every 4 years.
What do you think it'll boil down to? I mean, in such a close race, is it the swing states? Is it who's motivated more? Is it anti-incumbency? What's the big X factor?
There are lots of X factors, which is what's making it hard to predict. The polls show pretty much a 50-50 split. 7 states will really determine this election. They're called the swing states. I find it hard to believe the winner will not be the winner of Pennsylvania. I think that will be a state that just mathematically, unless many other results go in a very unexpected manner, that's a state that both either candidate will have to win the election.
That's the biggest.
That's the biggest prize.
Swing
The biggest. Yeah. And the margins are going to be very thin. So ultimately, it'll come down to voter enthusiasm for the two candidates. Whether more of Trump supporters come out to vote on Election Day, or whether more of Harris's voters come out. And that will happen tomorrow, and that will really determine the outcome.
So, one interesting thing, and I guess in elections past, other than the 2021, one new phenomenon we're seeing is a lot of people are voting early,
yes,
either by post or by mail-in, by in-person early voting. I think 75 million is the figure that I last checked. That's almost half the electorate.
Yes.
Is there anything in there for us to know that's perhaps the way in which this election is going?
So that has really changed a large part because of COVID. The last election happened during the pandemic, and that led to a lot more early voting. Traditionally, early voting has favored Democrats, and so those are counted later. That suggests that in many states we'll see a blue wave, a Democratic swing later. But it really will depend on a number of other factors. One of the things that's happened this time is this signs that more Republicans are voting early.
Okay.
So the balance may not be as skewed towards Democrats as in the past. But again, we'll only know after counting is completed.
Let's talk a little bit about the Indian American community. There's about 2.5 million of them. Generally they've been sort of Democrat leaning. This time, are you seeing anything different?
So traditionally about 2/3 are registered Democrats, about 25% are registered Republicans. There is some indication, there was a recent survey done by the Carnegie Endowment, there's another one of Asian American voters. It suggests that the picture might be a bit more complicated, particularly amongst younger men who might be gravitating more towards the Republican Party. But on balance, I would expect that the majority will still vote Democrat.
Tell us a little bit more about the younger men, because it's not just the Indian American young men. We're seeing that amongst African American young men. We're seeing among Hispanic young men, of course, white young men. Why are they gravitating towards Trump?
There are many sociological reasons. There's actually a very good book on this, on the sort of frustrations of younger men, particularly in developed economies, including the U.S., that they see fewer opportunities in the job market. They see they think that a sort of liberal agenda that prioritizes certain constituencies, including women, has been to their net disadvantage. And Trump and others seem to channel some of those frustrations. So they see an appeal there, and they see the doors closing on them more within the Democratic Party.